about setup. We've talked about entries. We're going to talk about some reports now and some basic accounting reports. We're going to discuss income statement, balance sheet, Schedule F, check reconciliation, register report, ledger detail, and user defined report. These are the reports that you'll use on a daily to monthly basis, or annual for Schedule F, I guess. But for most of them, you'll be using these on a daily basis. So I just want to make you familiar with them. A lot of our reports work very similar. And this is really small to see. I know that, so I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to read what's on my slide, and then I'll bring up the income statement. The income statement reports your income and expense for the time period that you select. You are able to customize it by setting up a definition. What I mean is that we're going to list every income and expense account that you have a transaction in. But if you need a more concise one where you want to combine some ledger accounts, you can create a definition to meet like what your bank wants or what your lending facility requires. We can customize a definition to meet those needs. You are able to run this on cash or accrual basis. That's if you run AP and AR, you can switch between cash and accrual. You can compare your different levels. So if you run a cash, tax, financial management, and marketing level, you can compare those different levels. You can also compare different periods. So you can compare year end, you can compare January to January, you can compare the quarters, however you set that up. You can do some comparison there. And if you have the intercompany module and you have more than one company, you can run some intercompany reportings on income statements as well. And if you have life cycle budget, you can compare to life cycle budget. I don't think the bottom two, well, running across companies, I don't think applies to anybody here. Life cycle budget may apply to you because we discussed about your cash flow budgeting. I think that is in life cycle budget for you. So the income statement is under our reports, report in general, and then you'll have a tab for accounting. If you just run accounting, you're only going to have the accounting tab. It won't be as confusing. So here we have income statement. We're going to click OK. On these reports, like the income statement that you're going to run a lot, you might also have like a set way you want to see it. And like we had income macros or input macros, we also have reporting macros where we'll say like the date range, ledger ranges, and centers so that you can always replicate that report quickly and easily. If I have time, I'll go into that. But just know that it is available. If I don't have time to go over, we can do that some one-on-one on that. So this first field says use a % of each division. I don't have anybody who does that currently. I think there might be one person that does that currently. So just ignore that one because nobody really does that anymore. The division range is as if you wanted to print the report for a specific division, you could just pick it off the list over here. So once I click in this field, I can click over here and it's going to pull the number of that division over here. You will notice though, when I have the 0 and all the Z's, it's kind of our wild card. It means it catches everything. This is the same in all reports. The 0 and the 6 Z's, 0-6 Z's means it's going to bring in every option in our drop down on the right. So for divisions, I'm going to run all my divisions. For my centers, just because there's limited data here, I'm going to run it for the whole set of centers here. Income statements, columns to include. This is just how many columns you're going to have on your report. So this is, if I choose number 1, I'm going to see a period year to date and my period as a percentage of my year to date. Number 2 is period and year to date. Option 3 is a period selected. So that would be where if I wanted to run for the last 6 months and watch and compare that to the 6 months previous and the 6 months previous, I could do a period selected. That's kind of complicated, so I'm not going to go into that today, but just know that that's something that we do train on individually to meet your needs there. Prior year equals full year, period year to date and dollar change, period year to date and percentage change. There's some cash versus accrual and year to date by division, and then like so the life cycle budget comparison. Right now, I'm just going to do option 2, which is period and year to date. If you were running a comparison to our life cycle budget, you would pick something on this next field for LCB scenario. We're not doing that. We're going to do start of fiscal year. I'm actually going to run this for 2022 because I think I have more data in 22 in this data set. I'm just going to do a whole year. So I'm just going to do 1/1 of 22 to 12/31/22. When it comes to use date cash exchange, these are on most of our accounting reports. This comes into play only if you're using accounts payable and receivable. So option 1 would be your accrual when the expense or income occurred. Option 2 and 3 would be when the cash exchange hands your date cash exchanged. We'll just do in period though. Maybe the date the check that you wrote the check for the AP or received the deposit for the AR. Wouldn't be clear date, it would be the date you put in the system on those. Report type. So if you have journal entries, which we didn't really touch on, but there's options for journal entries for different levels of reporting. We're just going to do cash tax, which is our basic cash terms, but sometimes when you work with accountants, they have different levels they want to report at, and you have that option. Definition, we're not using definition today. We're going to use all ledger accounts, but this is where, like I said, you could create a definition and run it by that definition. Periods to print only comes into play if I chose options 3 or 7, which I'm not using 3 or 7, so I don't have a period to print. Print lines with 0 amounts is kind of nice, just to make sure you're pulling in everything. It's kind of a check on your income statement, but you don't have to check that. I do want my ledger accounts printed on the left-hand column, so I will have that. Hidden rows would only come into play if you're using a definition. Inactive accounts. So if I check this box to include inactive accounts, it means you can inactivate an account at any time. So sometimes people inadvertently inactivate a ledger account after they've put in entries for that year to that account. So your income statement isn't going to report true if you don't include inactive accounts. So I always kind of err on the side of caution and check this box. And then examine report on screen just means the report's going to show up. I think it used to send to a printer, so you could choose to just to print the report, but we only do examine report on screen, so always check that box at the very bottom. I'm going to click OK. And here is our income statement. So obviously our income's at the top, then we list all of our expenses, and then we have our net income at the very bottom. On any of these lines, if I wanted to see what made up this $197,000 for grain sale, and this is all of our reports do this, you right click on it. And it's going to bring up every entry that makes up that total of $197,000. So you can see here, if you had questions further, you can right click and get to the actual entry where that was made. So it's going to bring up these are deposits. So it's going to bring up my actual deposit screen. I'm sorry, it's a little slow because I'm screen sharing and recording it at the same time. My computer is just about maxed out. So then here we have our actual entry that you could look at. If you had a invoice attached, there would be a box there in the bottom right. You could bring up that invoice that was attached, or that documentation. It's not always an invoice, that documentation. So that's easy way. Like if I didn't think this was right, I drilled into it. I found that entry was to the wrong ledger account. You can quickly change in the edit screen, put it in the right place, and then refresh its report and it would update it. So obviously these are each of my ledger accounts. So like sometimes a definition on this, maybe on definition, I would have combined my commodity sales into one line and combined 310 and 313 into one line on my income statement that said commodity sales. Maybe I had livestock sales, so maybe on my cattle sold would say livestock sales instead of cattle sold. Something like that you could do on your definitions. Your expenses work the same way as income. You can drill into them and see those actual expenses. You can always print the reports by hitting print. If I only wanted to print a range, I could click on range. That gets set like my first and last lines to print. And it only print what was in black on my report up top here. Everything in blue wouldn't print. Doesn't really make sense on this report, but some reports that does make sense to do, especially like a user-defined report. You can also export this to Excel. Click on the export button. Text or Excel, I guess. It's only taken what I picked between those lines there because I had that range set. But you can do the whole report as well. You can do it to a text file or Excel file. Name it and tell it where to go, and it will save. It will save that. Mm-hmm.
If you were to print this, because what I see on the screen doesn't show the top, the name of the business, things like that. Do you set up a template sense for it? Or like if I wanted to take this, print it and take it.
Okay, so when it prints, it does kind of print that at the top. I'll print this to PDF and I'll show you what it looks like if I printed it. Oh, it might be trying to go to my actual printer. Hold on. I'm going to go to printer setup. I'm going to pick my Primo PDF printer and then click OK, and then we'll print it again. It does list. Yeah. There it goes. I'm slow. Yeah, so whatever you have set up for your name of your company, like I have Dixon Family Farms, it shows here at the top. It tells you the date it was printed, date and time it was printed, and then I don't know how to get rid of this thing, but it also tells you the parameters you ran for the report. So it shows you that I ran for the entire year. And this is I ran for cash tax. If I ran it for a different version, it would say the other version though.
Okay, so that will automatically.
Yep, it will. Sometimes if you want it prettier and want your logo, that's when you would export it to Excel, maybe put your logo up there and print it from Excel. Or if you had letterhead, like pre-printed letterhead, you can do that. Okay. This is how. This is anything else running that unnecessarily here. So that's the income statement. The balance sheet is very similar options to your income statement. Like I said, most of our reports are going to have similar options on them. If you're running for a large amount of data, like you have a lot of data in your balance sheet, sometimes it is best to choose to not allow drill down because that's just extra memory it's pulling. So to run the report faster, you do have the option to disable drill down, which just gives you the numbers. You can't drill into the entries then. But that's a way to do it. And then there's optional net change line that will quickly show you if you're out of balance instead of having to do the math there, your own. And we'll just go through the balance sheet and how I like to run my balance sheets. You can see under balance sheet, I have these little dots and it says 2012 balance sheet. That is a macro I have saved there. That's how the macros would show on this report, on this screen, excuse me. So I'm gonna open my balance sheet. Again, we have the division at the top there. Start of the fiscal year and the end date for the report. So I'm just going at the end of 2022. Again, I can type it in or I can use the little calendar function up here. Columns to include. So this is a little bit different. You have the year to date, which is your typical just straight balance sheet. I prefer to use option 4. It's a 2-column report. Put your equity assets and assets and on the left, and then your equity and liability on the right. I believe it is. I just makes it across from each other to make sure they balance. Again, we're not using a life cycle budget. We have the option between the cash or accrual options here with our use date cash exchanged. Report types again, cash tax, and all those that we mentioned. Again, you can use a definition if you like. We have something called inventory register. Not many people use it, but if you do, you could choose to include that here. Down at the bottom, we have most of the same things, except we do have this include net change line, which I always recommend and I always check. And then if you have different divisions for your fiscal years, you can check this box to ignore the fiscal years and report as one report. All mine have the same fiscal year, so I'm not going to worry about that one. Up here on the right, this is where I mentioned that you cannot include drill down if it's a big report. I will include drill down, and I'm also going to include my inactive accounts just to cover my bases there. So here's what I said. I have my 2 columns. So I have my assets on the left, on the left, and liability and equity on the right. And I have that net change line that shows me I'm out of balance. Running it in the 2 column, it's really quickly to see though. You can compare those numbers much easily using the 2 columns. I know I'm out of balance there, but it's just nice to see that dollar amount there and out of balance. I can drill in just like I did on the income statement and drill on in any of these entries here.
And let's say that you
That's what it was. Yeah, you can double click the headings. In all of our reports, you can double click the headings to change these. They default to date, but you can definitely change that up. And you could also do it by vendor if you were looking for specific entry to a vendor. In all reports, you can do that. Yep. So that's one way. If you're out of balance, I always start here looking for an entry that looked out of balance. Another thing you could do is you would run looking for, which I'll show a little bit on the user defined report, trying to find undefined entries, and we'll go into that later today a little more in detail. Otherwise, balance sheet's out of balance. If you can't find anything glaring you do day to day, try to find where it was in balance, then work your way forward until you go out of balance and find it. Yep, it's gonna be your years. Each column a separate year. And I had the net change, so I can see really quickly at the bottom which years are out of balance. So.
you have something that a warning bell that goes off if I intersect. Okay, how could it be?
Good question. Most times it goes out of balance because somebody has deleted a setup file. It can go out of balance because if you're using accounts payable and receivable, it could be because there's a invoice that's been open for too long, and once it's open past, I think 72 months is the longest anything can be open. But if it happens to be there, it's gonna fall off and it's gonna change things in the history. Yeah. This one's pretty glaring that I was fined in 19 and not in 20, so this data set probably wasn't rolled over correctly into 2020. be as easy as that. Somebody changed something in 19 and then did not roll it over to make it go forward. And got things out of balance. It's pretty hard to get out of balance. It's not. Yeah, right. So yeah, if you didn't roll over right, if you didn't calculate retained earnings, if you went in a prior period and didn't do that, redo that, you could get out of balance. It just doesn't happen that often, but it can happen. If somebody goes into setup and changes the class on a ledger account, so you were running it as an expense and all of a sudden you're running it as asset, it's going to cause some problems. Yeah. It's usually after the fact errors, user errors. We don't have a hard year end, a closing thing. You can have what's called closed periods. And you can do that, which when you can set, one person has access to reopen periods, but you can keep that current year. You can do by month. Like if you have a hard month close, you can set that up so you can't go back into previous months and make entries. Those are options we do have. It's not the standard basic, but you can add that. It does how mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it does allow you. Right. And you have mm-hmm. Changes. There's talking about farm book year end. Once we got our taxes done and getting money paid or received, and then you give us the checkbox, would you make back up in that first year? Yeah, we don't have that. Yeah, in FBS, but yeah, no. Okay. But you have to be responsible. But, hey, right. Yeah, you can still keep moving. Yeah, do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was hard one for me too. Mm-hmm. But potentially then I could be confused. You can't put in like if once you go to year 2023, you have to physically change to input year 2022. You can't put in entries the wrong year. There it is. That was the final setup for. I'm sorry, company setup. No, don't. Feel free to interrupt. That's it's perfectly fine. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. Okay. From balance sheet.
So the market balance sheet.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so if there's an option, the cash tax market, financial and management. So those are all entries. You can make journal entries to move between. If you make a market entry, journal entry doesn't affect your cash tax, but you can run on market level and that overrides the cash tax for the reporting purpose only. So there's different journal entries you can make to make those different reports work. Schedule F, this does use a definition. We usually release the new Schedule Fs a month after the IRS releases them because we have to wait for their release and then we have to make our updates and then we try to get it out within 30 days of the IRS release. It is a definition that you have to set up first and then it runs like a normal report. So to set up the definition, it's set up accounting Schedule F bridge. And what this does is the lines on the left match up with the lines. Hold on, did I get that right? Hold on, we'll go back one step. Matches up the lines on the Schedule F. You do have to be careful because the Schedule F bridge, this still has a 2022 for some reason. I don't know why. I'm at 23, but this is I don't know why. I don't have updates probably. This will update based on the Schedule F lines for that year. So this is where, so with my sales of livestock, I would want to make sure that I picked my cattle sold ledger account there and breeding stock sold Those are my livestock sales. Your taxable agriculture payments. I have account 450, which is my USDA payment. Sales of livestock products, grains, and stuff like that. I have all my 310, my soybean sales, hay sales, all that up there. If your CCC loans, you can put those ledger counts if you have those. Crop insurance proceeds. You can ask for all that. You pick the ledger counts that match each description over there. You do have your miscellaneous ones down here. So we leave, A through F. You can sign up the right ledger accounts, and then you change your descriptions here. So whatever line A is, you type in what it was. I don't know what line A is, but and then line B, whatever goes there on those lines, you can type them here and save those. So when you print, it's going to change those descriptions over there. There is a way to kind of double check your work. Once you've filled this out, you click view by accounts, and it's going to list all your ledger accounts and what line on the schedule F you put it on. So right now it's telling me for 336, I have it on 2 different lines. So it's going to tell me you can't do that. You need to go back and fix it. So it doesn't allow you to put the same ledger account on more than one line, but it also tells you which lines you're putting them all on. So if you're missing something like timber sales should be somewhere, you would know it wasn't assigned. So you need to go back to the definition and assign. So we save our definition. I'm going to remove this up here really quick. Didn't like that. And we save it. And then you can go run your report. We have a schedule F here. Same as all the rest, you put in your division range, your beginning month, ending month, schedule F year. So we were just working on the 2022 schedule F. So you can go back and historically run them without changing your input years. I'm just going to go ahead and take that 2022 schedule F definition because that's the one we were just looking at. We do have the option, same as the cash versus accrual here. So if you're using AP and AR, you might want to use option 2 or 3. Your cash tax option there too, and run the report. And that just fills in based on those ledger accounts and the date range that we had. With your net profit or loss at the very bottom. Same options to print it, save it, export it, whatever you want to do there. This report is still drillable. You can drill into anything here as well. Okay. Check register reconciliation report. This is a report that you'll use, probably one of the most often ones. It's one report that has 2 functions. So we have, obviously, we can run a check register, which is like if you had a handwritten register, it goes by the date and the check number. You have a check reconciliation, which runs by the date cleared, which is what you reconcile to your bank. That's where you see the date cleared and you run like that. The switch between these 2 reports is a checkbox. So you put in your date range at the top. You select what bank account you're running the report from. You can choose to print all detail, or if you don't, it'll be like a summary. But if you're doing a reconciliation or anything like that, you usually want all the detail. Print 1 line per check. So what that means is if your check was broken into 5 different lines, do you want it more concise to read it? You might just want to print 1 line per check. So it's just the total amount. And then this is the most important box. Date range uses a check date. So if that box is checked, it's going by the date of the check, which is a check register. If you uncheck it, it's going to go, and it told me that, it kind of popped that little thing up a minute ago. Uses check date or date cleared. So if I uncheck the box, I'm going by date cleared, and that is a check reconciliation. So I'll run this as a reconciliation, but nothing's cleared, so it's not going to help a lot here. But so I ran it for 2022, and we have our check number on the left, our date, our vendor, our ledger account, and the description of the account, a dollar amount, and then If it's check, it lists lists that again here in the check column. If it was a deposit, it lists it in deposit column, and then we have the running balance. If it was cleared, it would have a date cleared instead of these stars over here. And then we have our centers and divisions, descriptions, long descriptions over on the far right. So none of these are cleared. So we go down the bottom, it's not going to tell us much. Yep, I'll show that in just a moment. So everything is uncleared. So our there's no cleared here. Yeah, so this is our here's our cleared balance, and this is our total balance at the very bottom, which includes uncleared checks. So if you're running it month by month, you can compare your checks and deposits to your bank statement to make sure those match the bank statement if it was ran for the right date range. What Cheryl was saying, if I want to clear one of these from this, like I was running this report, I saw something that was uncleared that needed to be cleared. You can right click on the entry. And in the date cleared box right here, I can type in the clear date and save it. If I refresh this report, because that's my only, yeah, it's gonna show right here, it's cleared here. So now I do have a cleared balance of 2,700 for checks. And it did change my cleared balance at the bottom here. That's one way to do clear checks. But while we're talking about cleared checks, there is another way. This is the way you most likely do it. If you're looking at like a check statement, is you go to input, clear checks and deposits. You pick the date range you want to run it for. I'm gonna run this back to 22. Pick your bank account. There is an option to clear with a yes or a no. What that means is if you choose that and you choose to clear it, it's going to clear out the date of the check. So it's not going to reconcile to your bank statement. So I do not recommend that. Instead, I'm going to leave that unchecked. Do I want to include cleared entries on this report it runs? I'm not going to now because I'm talking about clearing checks. But if I'm trying to find a check, I might check that box and show both cleared and uncleared entries. And then I'm going to click OK. This is going to bring me up any uncleared checks that meet that criteria. And then I can go through here and put in a date. So if I hit enter. So you can do the exact date, or sometimes if you're looking, if you reconcile like every Friday, maybe just clear it with that date of Friday. You could put that date, like whatever that date would be, in that and not be the exact date, but you can do the exact date as well. But once you've put a date in, if you want to continue that on down the line, you hit F3 and it's going to bring that date in every screen. It's going to warn me here that I tried to clear this on 121, but my date of my check wasn't until 127. So just gives you a warning there, so I can go back and change that. Put in all your dates here, and you can hit save, and it would save those. You can also, I'm going to hit cancel on this screen. I don't want to save my changes. You can, and I don't do this very often, so hopefully if I mess up, Cheryl will let me know. You can also reconcile on this screen if you choose include cleared entries and then put in your ending bank balance. If you're looking at your statement and it says your bank balance is $20,000 and click OK. And then I can go through here and clear my checks and deposits. And it's going to, at the bottom here, it's going to tell you how much you still have to clear to make the balance you put in of $20,000. It helps you reconcile there. My dates are funny there, so it didn't look real great. But if you had valid data in there, it would help you find what you need to reconcile. Mm-hmm. From the report.
No, we're not doing this. If I go in the debit entry
Mm-hmm.
and change the date before I put it out, I'm never going to set. And I always come in input, find input clear check.
Oh.
Yeah, I haven't made any, that's why I've been pushing up next month.
Mhm.
No, I just. There's that.
Let's see what it is.
It'll be on.
Yeah, it uncleared that one.
And then.
Yeah, I uncleared it with zeros.
Yeah. Zeros here and zeros on the input, not on the input. Okay.
Yeah, if I didn't report, right click it. If that had a date on it, I could change it to all zeros and save it here.
Yeah, because I do forget them.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Okay, ledger account details. So next one I was going to show you guys. I don't use this report a lot. I know some people swear by it. That's why I'm showing it. Let me get this out of the way though. Can I move the screen? A ledger account detail. This is going to be a very detailed, like I said, a list of all your ledger accounts and all the transactions. All screens again work the same. We have our division range. We have our fiscal year beginning and ending date. This one has a little bit different that we haven't seen yet. It's asking for a range of ledger accounts. So again, with the 0 and the Z's, I'm going to pull in all ledger accounts. But I could choose a range or a single one. So I could pick like 310, 312, 320. It's putting them up there with a comma in between them. I could also, if I want to do a range of like all my income accounts, I could pick my first income account and my last income account that I want to report on. Click here in the ledger range, remove the comma and add a hyphen. And then it's going to do a range. It's going to report everything between 310, everything in between and including 310 to 460. I can choose for my description options. I can choose, if you're doing feeding, you could add some feeding descriptions. Otherwise, if you're not using the feeding centers, you're going to just use standard descriptions. You can include your opening balance, which is the rollover from previous years. Income accounts, I should not have a opening balance, so I'm going to choose to not include that or the beginning balance. Shouldn't make a matter on the income accounts. Again, I have my date cash exchange and my report types. Over on the right, I have to print all detail. There's a recap that you can choose to print or not print, and this is if you're printing it as a PDF or printing it to paper. If I want to include my opening balances and recaps, and then if I want to, when I print it out, if I want a new page for each account, you could choose to do that. And then if I want to print accounts with no details or examiner report on screen. So most of these are how it's going to print out in the paper or PDF form. This is a report that you're going to use. I use only at year end when I need to take it to my accountant or send it to my accountant to review my transactions with more detail. And then I usually do at that point in time, I do usually do one page for each account. This makes it easier for my accountant to flip through the pages. If it's PDF or paper, either one. He prefers paper. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And you're going to see very detailed. So my grain sales up here, I'm going to have the date, the number, the vendor, all the information there. I scroll further over here. I've had quantity or weight there, unit prices and long descriptions, and everything over there on the right. Down here is the recap section I was talking about. It's going to summarize my grain sales. It says basically it should just be your total line. It should match the total line for grain sales up top. Just different way to see the data. I said I don't use that report very often, and I don't. I usually, and it's personal preference and what you get used to and what you like. I choose the user-defined report more often. This user-defined report, because ledger account, you can just select by ledger account, which is great for your ledger account level reports. This user-defined report, though, is everything. You can search by division, center, or ledger. You can search by vendor or descriptions. There's just so many other ways you can slice this report. Now, this is usually my go-to report for absolutely everything. It just has beginning date and end date, your ledger account range. So I'm just going to take this back to all ledger accounts for right now. You can choose by specific centers or all of them, your divisions or all of them. You can pick a vendor from your vendor list, or you can leave it open and it's going to report for all vendors. You can choose a description. So if you're looking for something, you bought an oil filter and you put oil filter in the description, you could type oil filter here and it's going to pull up entries that say oil filter. You can search by entry type. So Z is all entry types, but you can run this report for just your checks or deposits or any of these type of entries. So if you're trying to find a specific entry, you can really narrow it down to make the search quicker. And then we have some recap options. It's going to recap. The default is ledger account, but from the very beginning, you could pick any of these other recap options, which are center, division, description, vendor, or group or project. You can also change these after you run the report. So you can just pick the first one on the list and then change it once you're in the report to see the different views. I can choose for my description option. I have the feeding ones again there if you were using the smart feeder. Again, date, cash exchange, and report types. Over on the right, I'm going to ignore the top one. I will explain the top one in a little bit. But we have our beginning balance entries, details. Internal account and center division numbers is not something you should ever have to do, but sometimes if you're having an issue, I or the developers will run by that. Exclude offsetting bank account. So this report, if you're running for checks, will show you both sides of the check. It'll show you the bank side and it'll show you the expense side. If you only want to see the expense sides, you could check this box and only see the expense side, so you won't see the offsetting, the second side of the entry. It makes a much cleaner report sometimes. You can choose to recap by entry. So this means that for every check, it's going to give you all the lines and give you a total. So it makes the report much longer, but in some certain circumstances, that is a very useful tool. And you can add the long descriptions to the AP and AR. I'm going to run this pretty basic, wide open, what I call wide open for the year 2022. This is going to show both sides of every entry. So we do show some beginning balances. These not used, when you see like this line right here says not used for center, I'll get into that a little bit later. What that is telling me though is center 4,000 has been deleted. I use it for entry and it's been deleted at some point in time. But we have every entry listed here for all of 2022. As I mentioned, these are checks. So we have one line for the check and then we have one line for the expense. And the deposits would be one line for the checking account and then one line for the deposit. So it's just a big report. At the bottom, it does give you some great totals, like your total income, expense, asset, liability, and equity. These should tie out to your balance sheet or income statement. So it's a great report to help tie out. But what I like most about this report is this toggle type. So I said we could recap by ledger account. So there's two tabs at the top here. It's detail and then recap by ledger. And so this is going to recap and basically shows me an income statement, the date I selected. So your totals per ledger account, the date range. But we also have expenses here at the bottom. So then we have some expenses here and our assets and liabilities. So that's kind of the balance sheet, kind of like a balance sheet built into it, as well as the income statement. I can choose, this is by ledger account. I can choose toggle type of recap down here in the bottom right. It changes this like to center. So I've toggled it, but it's not current. I click on recap and now I have I am totaling up by my centers. I have several unknown here, which have been deleted, but the other ones give me a total amount per center. I can do this with division, descriptions, vendors. I'll recap it by vendor. This was just beginning balances I had on there. The other ones must not be in my vendor file. Then you can do back to a ledger account there with center and then division. So you can recap by that. So some great recap functions there as well. A couple other things here. We talked about scanner interface. I don't think I have anything scanned, but this is a very wide report. So you can keep going over to the right, and it gives you a lot of information, like what the entry type was, what the bank account was used. If you had groups for feeding, your group number would show here. It shows you the date that the entry was made. If it was edited, it gives you an edit date. If you have a multi-user, it'll tell you who entered it and who updated it. So I'm assuming if you go on, you will have users, so you can see who entered it and who edited the entry. So if you ever have to go back and track, okay, why did you make this edit? Why did you do this? Yeah, it's your fault. It's always the accountant. Yeah, I was gonna show that on the scanner part here. So I don't have anything scanned. If I had anything scanned, there's a column here that says scan, and mine say no. I think all of them say no. But if you had something scanned, you could drop this over. I like to drag it, this column, and drop it over further to the left. You can do this on any one of them. But so it's easier to view because if you're going through this all the time. Yeah, you can just move it over however you want. And then if this said yes, I would click on it and bring up my scanned image really quickly, and it wouldn't go through the entry. I mean, I could drill into an entry and get to it too, but it wouldn't. You wouldn't have to.
This is what you and I were talking.
Yeah. So I'm gonna quickly. I don't know if I do this really. I should be able to do it pretty quickly. I'm just gonna attach something to an entry here really quick, so you can see that, just so you guys can see this feature, or not, because I don't have it. Because I don't have anything set up on a scanner yet on that. I haven't set that up. So I thought I could do it quickly and I can't. I'm sorry, but you should be able to click really quickly through that PDF files through that column. Yeah. Okay. So the user defined report, I mentioned we have the undefined entries. That is our error catching thing. So we mentioned, like, if your balance sheet's out of balance, if your check register isn't balancing out, sometimes this can be the issue. So I'm just going to run this again for undefined entries. So I use the same date range I used before. Check the box for undefined entries. It's only going to bring me up those entries that said not used. So these are all happen to be in the center column, which tells me that the center has been deleted. If I want to correct these, what I would do is I go into center setup. Exit that. Setup, cost profit center. So it's 4,000 was this first one on the list here. So I have to add that back in. So add 4,000. You may or may not know what that 4,000 center was. So if I don't know, if I'm doing this for a client, I put a restoring center 4,000. And a room there, 4,000. And I'd save it. Oh, here. Sorry. You can also do restore deleted. But if you don't want to do them all, you could do it this way too. Save that, and then it's not showing it here though. Yeah, more than one though. So I'm thinking it has to be, this is a new feature, and I think it has to be deleted within when this feature was indicated. So you can only, if you deleted in 11.8, it would show there. So those are probably deleted in my version 11.7 because I just upgraded this data. So I've added that center 4,000 back in. I have saved it. If I come back to this report, so the top line was 4,000. If I click on refresh, if I hit refresh, I might have to go into the entry here and actually. So I just have to click through it. I've already added that center back in and save it. Close the report, I guess rerun it. That new center table, it changes the way it functioned a little bit, and I'm still getting used to it. that 4,000 is gone. Now I'm up to 4,240. I'd have to add that back in. So yeah, you'd have to, anything that shows on this report really needs to be fixed, added back in, whatever it is, and then that should fix your balance sheets. All these changes I made were in 2022. So we did mention that you'd have to roll over in 23, which is just quickly utilities, create balance, only accounting, and it's going to re-roll that into 2023 so that that's still not, so it is defined in 23 as well. Yeah, you do calculate retained earnings to recalculate that number. Yep. Yep. Let's see here. Ledger account detail, user defined. Okay. Let's see how far off track we are. And it's fine. Some of the stuff I was going to cover, we've covered already. So, so some tips and tricks. If using a definition and report, and then you run the report and doesn't look correct, just go back to the definition and make sure that all the ledger accounts are added. If you're running your date cash exchanged options, which is using AP and AR, and you have balances that don't look right, or you get an error message, you might have to run an AP or AR detail report by option 7 to recover that that issue with the AP and AR, or recover bad data. If you're using the user defined report, you can use that box with the undefined entries, which we just went over. One report I didn't report on was a trial balance report, which is, I call it a combination of the income statement and balance sheet, but you can run that trial balance report to help find errors in your balance sheet because it is a combination of the income statement and balance sheet. And it also compares data from previous years to see if there's an issue with beginning balances or rollover or retained earnings. And then if you're looking for an error, sometimes you just have to narrow it down to a specific date and look at the entries on that date. And then some do's and don'ts, again, to just reinforce what some of the stuff the setup was. Do think about how you're going to use your data, meaning what kind of reports do you need to pull from this data. That will help lead you in how to set up your ledger accounts and your centers. Do plan on growth. Leaving the space for adding centers and ledger accounts is a really great idea just for that growth in your operation. And you can edit as necessary to improve your data input. So you can start basic, you can increase your details, and you can always edit to improve that. And never, ever, ever delete anything that has been used in the setup files because that causes lots of problems. Okay, so that was my basic, which was supposed to be done by 10 o'clock. We're only 25 minutes behind. Does anybody have any questions on anything? We can take that time now. We're not in that much of a hurry. We can definitely work any questions we have. Okay. We can do it right now. It's fine. No, we're good.
Is there anything after the appreciation is factored into
No. There is an option if you go through our payroll program that has a depreciation thing, but usually people get it from your accountant and you enter it as a journal entry at the end of the year.
I'm not using that. How much of that each piece of appreciate doesn't. Yeah, but yeah, so it's the inventory software front end price of food packaging. Is this going to be doing that?
It doesn't have to. I mean, you can ask, it can, but it's not going to ask you for it. It's not going to require it.
Yeah.
But it can.
So if I use smart keyboard, it is intensity at least and to go back to page, it will I need to make intensity.
Mm-hmm.
To tell smart keyboard these people.
Yep. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that'll be a different type of entry than what we.
It was. It'd be a smart, yeah, smart feeder entry. Mm-hmm. We kind of went over that, but she's talking about like a birth of an animal is different than purchasing an animal. Yeah.
When say we have a crop. The crop is one of our centers.
Mhm.
Soybeans 2023.
Mhm.
Brought the seed and put it in. Example in there.
Mhm.
Harvest. Production to market.
Mhm.
Some of 2023 soybeans are being sold in 2024.
Mhm.
But eventually the bins include also. How do I close? Soybeans 2023.
Yeah, there is, so that's through the crop audit module. Once you're done with 23, you can close it and activate that center for your inputs. You're filling out your marketing center, which is an ongoing one. I mean, you can do marketing center for 2023 grain and wait till that all that grain is sold and then close that, or you can have an ongoing marketing center for soybeans. Depends on how you want to do it. That's a decision you have to make. How is your bins or your marketing center always cleared out before you put the new crop in? Do you keep those crops separate is the first question to start asking yourself. Do you keep one? Do you always sell all your 23 before you harvest 24? We'll determine how you set that up. But yes, when you're done with the input production center, which will be at the harvest, you can close that one and start your new production center.
If I start buying soybeans,
You can have it open at the same time as well. Yeah, you know. Yeah.
So there are some entries that I would call general ledger entries. It's not entering a check or the cost, but it's making feel like you're in it.
Mm-hmm. I kind of skipped over that because they're more end of the year. They're called a journal entry, which is a two-sided entry, keeps everything balanced, but you can move from between accounts. A journal entry is a transfer between ledgers, centers of division, or combination of those. But enter is very similar to check or deposit, except you don't have a checking account applied to it or anything like that. You still can put a vendor in to give it a description. You still have descriptions. You still have the same ledger, center divisions. Yep. Any other questions?
I don't know. You know what center. And you don't inventory for that. Then you put that top. That allows you
You can go very detailed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 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 And you see the dollar value associated with it.
And then you harvest.
It can be, or it can be a transaction plus entry if you're selling it directly. And they all can tie together, or they can be separate entries. There's just several ways to do it based on how your information comes to you. Yeah. It can get very, I mean, it's when you get into that level, it's just so unique to each operation. It's kind of hard to give a general overview because every processes and has data.
This information with balance sheets. All of our animals are born on the farm. And so we typically, how do I get a born animal into the balance sheet?
So you would do, you want to assign like an asset value? Is that what you're saying? Like you want to list it as an asset with a value on it?
The requirement that I would have is I want to have a balance sheet, like on December 31st, the value of all the animals that I have on the farm. Of course, that we're buying and selling all month. So how do I adjust those inventories? I'm not going to go on every time an animal is born, going at it again. But I want at the end of the year when we do the counts where we're at.
So I would do a journal entry that one. It would be, I would use an asset account for whatever you're using for tracking your livestock. You give it a dollar value and maybe a quantity. So if you had like 10 born that year and they have each $1,000, so $10,000 to your asset on your balance sheet, I would offset that with a cash transfer in equity account. And something like that. Not maybe cash, but transfer in, or because you didn't buy it. So that's what I would do. I would use an equity account, call it what you want. I would use some kind of transfer in. Inventory adjustment's a good one. Yeah, there you go, Doug. That's a good one too. It could be called an inventory adjustment. So that offsets it. So you're gonna have that line as an equity account to balance off that.